First of all, a few introducing words. This is a space for Ukrainians who created or actively contribute to open source projects and who are experiencing war right now. So we built some stuff for global community together. Some of it is well known, some of it is well used, and we organized together to speak about our experiences and to spread awareness about the war that is going on right now as we speak. First of all, let's introduce ourselves. Tell us who you are, what you've built for open source community. After that, you can tell us what you're experiencing right now, what was the first day of war for you, what happened to you since then, and how you got to the safety, if you're safe right now. I hope everyone is staying safe. So I will start from introducing myself. I'm Dennis. I lived in Kiev. I built some stuff, specifically an interactive prompt for ZSH called Spaceship. Also, I created a WTF.js list of some quirky JavaScript examples. Also, I built some custom UI cards for home automation tool called Home Assistant. And I actively organize local community in my hometown. I've made a conference called CherryPy. And we left the Kiev on December 15, when it seems like the point of no return has passed. Embassies were being evacuated from Kiev. The company where I work was evacuating everyone who wished to do so abroad in Turkey. And we decided to leave because it was kind of win-win for us. Like if the war begins, we are out of the combat zone. If not, we are going to spend some time with parents and safely return back home. Unfortunately, the war began. Right now I'm staying in the western part of Ukraine, in Chernihiv, in the house of my parents. And it's safe here so far. There are some air attack alarms, typically about this time of the day. So there is non-zero chance that an air alarm could trigger in any time, and I will need to go to the shelter. So hopefully there won't be any air attacks during this space. Let's get started from other speakers. I will name you, okay, every one of speakers, so we can maintain some order in the space. Also, for the one who are listening us, if you have any questions, you can DM me, send this question in direct messages. My DMs are open. Ask whatever you want, and we will. I will moderate those questions and ask our speakers. So let's start with VSH, Volodymyr.
Hey everyone, my name is Vladimir. Thanks, Dennis, for your story. Basically, my story is somewhat similar to yours, but I'll start with introducing myself. So I become part of open source community quite some time ago. For me, it's a way to express myself. I'm doing a lot of research. I have a lot of ideas that I'm trying to verify. I'm doing those experiments all the time, including software and hardware. So basically, an ability to contribute to open source projects and to create my own projects on GitHub was well, basically just a way to express myself and to create something. So I'm mostly known as co-founder of Blynk IoT platform, which is a community-driven project. You can Google it. It's a really well-known among tinkerers and makers around the world. I was also excited about WebAssembly lately, so I became a part of this community. Created, like, basically became a co-author of WASM-3 engine, which is really quick WebAssembly interpreter, which has a lot of uses in, well, I believe in embedded devices as well. So this was one of the researches that was well recognized and accepted worldwide as well. So basically, for me, the war didn't start, out of the blue. So I was looking at the all those movements of Russian army, like when they entered Belarus. I was already like thinking about it as a real threat. So I arranged, well, basically I decided to go to vacation to the Western Ukraine, where my native town is. So I visited my parents with my wife and children. I basically collected all of the necessary stuff which I need for my work. But of course, I couldn't take all my lab with me, or like even some of the precious stuff that I had in house. And I left my house, I think, on 15 of February, and we were just having a vacation. And then I decided to prolong it a bit because I saw that, and I thought that the war could begin really soon, and it did, unfortunately. So that's well, basically, I'm really happy that my family was safe throughout this time, and well, basically, now I'm getting really sad news from time to time. Like, even on the background, we have all these situations in different cities in Ukraine, and it's all devastating. But now I'm also getting some sad news from my friends, and even like some reports that my own house was destroyed. And like when you hear news like that, basically you're crashed for several hours, but then just start working with yourself, thinking about like good sides of it. And well, I think I was able to express my thoughts in the recent tweets. Yeah, so everyone in Ukraine is currently being hurt. Some people are dying, and this cannot be accepted. And unfortunately, we don't have any, like, we didn't start the war, right? So we just need to defend ourselves. We feel strong. We feel love. We feel being loved, and we feel being supported by most of the world, and this really helps to overcome these difficult times. Yeah, so thanks for that.
Thank you, Volodymyr. Natalia is the next one.
Hello, everyone. My name is Natalia, and regarding open source, you probably know me if you're part of Vue.js framework community. I'm Vue.js core team member I care mostly about writing view documentation. So if you were learning the framework from the docs, probably you've read something I've been writing. And I contribute to different parts of Vue ecosystem, like Vue Apollo and other projects as well. And my story is probably not typical for this chat because I'm not in Ukraine. A year ago, I was lucky to move to Amsterdam without knowing I'm lucky. It was just moving to the other country. And of course, last month, I've been following the news regarding the Russian troops around Ukraine. I believe I can tell that almost nobody believed that the war will actually start. We were tracking the moves of the troops, thinking about, okay, this is some, demonstrating the power, playing the muscles, and so on and so forth. But it was scarier and scarier. And I remember the night after 23rd of February. In the middle of the night, I was walking by the message of "it's done" from one of my friends, and I had no idea what is done, but it was very worrying. The next message was from my mom saying that we see the missile strike because my parents are located on the western Ukraine, the city of Lutsk, fairly nearly the military airport there in Lutsk, and they actually witnessed the missile strike. I can tell you that was probably the scariest moment of my life. When you understand that your parents are seeing missile strike right now, you cannot even believe this. It was like 4 to 5 a.m. morning in the Netherlands. And my only idea was like, how can I move them out of Ukraine? Because my family is in Ukraine. My friends are in Ukraine. Lots of my colleagues are in Ukraine and suffering right now. The next week after this was like a long day full of nightmares. You just cannot stop doom scrolling the news. You're outside of the country and you can do fairly nothing but just contributing, sending money to volunteers, trying to help everyone to move, and like pinging your friends and family like maniacally because you just want to make sure they are alive. And unfortunately, I've lost one of the contacts. I still have no idea what happened to them. This is my friend from the Luhansk region. They were close to LNR and DNR regions. And the last message I got was just, there is no electricity here anymore, and our phones are running out of battery. So I don't even know what to add to this. It's extremely hard to witness right now what's going on in Ukraine. Like the last day about Mariupol bombings and so on and so forth. I was lucky to move my mom here out of Ukraine. My dad is still staying there. And if there are any Polish people right now listening to this, I want to thank you personally, because it was amazing to hear about what volunteers are doing in Poland right now. I don't know what to say else, honestly, so I will just pass to Vladimir.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Vlad. I joined the open source community about 11 years ago when I released an open source library for interactive maps called Leaflet, which is now kind of the industry standard. And for the last 8 years, I've been working at Mapbox, also one of the leaders in the mapping industry. And throughout those years, I created more than 50 different open source libraries focusing on performance and data visualization and maps. And if you ever worked with maps, you probably touched a lot of my code. So today is a happy day for me because for the last 5 days, we had no contact with half of my extended family, which were stuck in a little village outside of Kiev called Lipivka. And after we lost contact with them, we heard that the village is occupied by the invaders. the family went there to wait outside of the city, like because they felt safer there. But then troops started arriving from the Belarus side, and first because of shelling and fights, the power went out. They damaged some. They started targeting civilian infrastructure like power grids and communication towers. So first they had no power, and they had to charge their phones from a car while there was still gas. And then the communication went out because the Russian army is suppressing signals. Yeah, so we were super worried, and we read online that there are basically no routes for evacuation from that village. And finally, today they appeared online again and said that they managed to escape on a car. And now they're safe with us, and for that, because of that, I'm very happy. Although some of my close family and friends remain in areas that are dangerous. I'm myself, me, my wife, and my twin girls, which will be 8 years in June. They are safe with me in southwest of the country, in a city called Khmelnytsky. It's relatively safe here, apart from air raid sirens like 4 times a day. But the basement here, the bomb shelter, is pretty convenient. It's fast to run there, and my kids can grab their iPad and play some games while we're waiting. Sometimes up to 1.5 hours for the alert to go off. I also didn't believe that the war would happen, but when the U.S. intelligence claimed that February 16th will be the day of the invasion, I still didn't believe, because I usually try to have a positive, optimistic outlook on life, but my wife is very panicky, and she persuaded me to leave for some time, and we grabbed our kids and we went to a small hotel outside of the city, and we stayed there for 5 days. The invasion didn't happen on the 16th or some days after that, so we eventually came back home. And on the 24th of February, we woke up at 5 a.m. in the morning from loud explosions. At first, we were disoriented, not even sure what's happening, but my first reaction is grabbing my phone and opening the news, and the news all scream, the invasion has started, Russia's invading, troops coming into Ukraine, and airstrikes all over the country. So we woke up the kids, started packing erratically, and basically for half a day we didn't even know what to do, because we weren't sure it's safe to leave, and we weren't sure it's safe to stay where we are. But eventually we decided to run for our lives, and about 4 or 5 p.m. when it started getting dark, we decided to grab our kids, our cat, and as much stuff as we could into our car, and we drove off. There was a huge traffic jam outside Kiev because everyone tried to escape, and it took us about 3 hours to just drive outside of the border of the city, and we decided to avoid the biggest highway west because we heard that it's not safe. So we decided to go by smaller town routes, and the roads were badly damaged with potholes everywhere, and we saw dozens of cars stranded on the side, and my biggest worry was not to pop a tire, because I'm not an experienced driver. I'm only driving for 2 years, and so all my focus was on driving safely. And it took us about 14 hours to get where we are here to safety. And I'm really happy that we made it without any incidents. But some of my friends stay in Kiev. They help the volunteering effort. My mom is also staying, and she refuses to leave, even though she has a car and full gas. And here I'm trying to do everything I can to help, like rallying donations, spreading news on Twitter, and in the last few days I've been even managing to work a little bit, although before and this is a screen time report from my phone, that I spent about 11 hours a day on average glued to my screen, mostly reading the news and talking to my friends and relatives. Thank you. I'll pass on to Oleksii.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. Okay, cool. So yeah, my name is Oleksii. I'm also from Ukraine, Kiev, originally. I guess I'll talk a bit about my open source background. So I'm mainly a library developer in the .NET community. Some of my libraries have been used in a few thousand projects in our ecosystem. I also develop a few desktop applications such as Discord Chat Exporter, LiveBop, and YouTube Downloader that is also used by other people as well. And I have been doing that for, I think, 6 years now. As far as work goes, I guess I kind of saw it coming, even though I didn't want to believe it for the longest time. I also knew that with the way the Russian forces were building up on the border, and with the way the I guess the news were developing, it was kind of clear to me that at least something is going to happen, whether it's going to be a full-scale invasion or not. I had to prepare in some way. So I did pack my backpack a while ago, I think in the beginning of the year, sometime in January. So I was at least sort of prepared for that. But despite that, when the war broke out and I started hearing explosions, nothing could really prepare you for that emotionally. Actually, the way it started was really, I guess, unexpected, because I was following the news, and I was also watching the airspace over Ukraine on Flight Radar, and I saw that a bunch of planes started routing back, and some of the planes that were going to Ukraine were returned. Some of the planes that were leaving Ukraine were returned back to the airports here. And then some of the other news have started developing, and I realized that it might actually start not like tomorrow or in a week, but actually tonight. And that was around 2 or 3 a.m., I think. And I realized at that point that there was no way I was going to be able to go to sleep. So I basically stayed up the rest of the night until around 5 a.m., where the Russian president basically declared war. And most people around that time were sleeping, so it was very quiet, and I was very anxious, and yeah, it was really like a difficult time. And at some point, the next thing I know is that I started hearing explosions, which I didn't really know where they were coming from at that point, but later I realized those were most likely air defenses striking at UAVs or some other aerial objects in the sky. But that was still very scary for 2 reasons. First of all, because obviously those were explosions that like actually happen near to where I live. I could not just hear them, I could also feel them in the walls, as the walls were shuddering every time there was an explosion. And the second part is that, like I said, most people were sleeping. my friends were sleeping. The people that live with me, like not like directly with me, but in the same apartment complex were also sleeping. So I wasn't really sure what I should do, or whether I should like try to wake somebody up. So I guess the first thing I did was just phone everybody I knew. I didn't have any relatives in Ukraine, I guess, luckily. So I phoned all my friends, some of them in hotspots or potential hotspots at that point, like Odessa and eastern regions, some of them on other parts of Ukraine. And I just basically said, hey, I'm sorry for waking you up, but there is a war going on. And yeah, it was kind of a surreal thing to experience, because you try to maintain composure, and then the person at the other end does not actually believe you, because, well, at that point, nothing really happens. You have to kind of convince them that it is time to pack your bags and go somewhere, because you might not have a chance in the future. And then, since by that time, you could hear explosions happening around, some people have woken up, and I could see people leaving the apartment complex on cars, and the highway next to us was really, really packed, which was unusual for this time of day. And so at that point, there were still no news, so I decided to go to the nearest bomb shelter, which is actually the metro station. And on my way there, the most surreal part about that experience, like just going to the bomb shelter, is how everybody was very, very calm. There weren't too many people out on the streets, but all the people that I did see, they didn't look like they were panicking at all. Some people were just having normal conversations. Some people were, listening to music. There were a lot of National Guard units and police units out on the streets, way more than usual. But otherwise, it was just another day, and that was kind of weird. But yeah, anyway, then I started hearing air raid sirens. People were waking up. People were asking what's happening. Some people that I didn't manage to reach on my phone earlier that night also woke up, and we had conversations in different messengers explaining what happened. Some people started gathering up at public bomb shelters, like the subway station. Some of them were going somewhere. Some of them were just staying there. Some of them had bags. Some of them were just empty-handed. So it was like a very unclear sort of situation where there wasn't, like, you didn't really know what you were supposed to do and what was the best way to guarantee your safety. So just in case, I decided to buy a train ticket to the western part of Ukraine, which by that point where I looked, the nearest train that had tickets available was at 10 p.m. on that day, and the invasion started at 5 a.m. So I had to wait basically the entire day. So I basically spent most of it either in the subway station. At some point, I went back home to pick up a few more things, and then eventually I just sat on a train and then went west. The trains were functioning really poorly, even though it was basically the first day of the invasion, and it just got worse from there. But at that point, a lot of the trains were already delayed by 6 hours, some of them even more, and some of them completely canceled. You didn't know how long you would have to wait for your train if it was delayed. Most of the time, it just said that it was delayed, and you just had to like sit there and wait until it comes or until it gets canceled. And at that point, there was already, I forgot what it's called, but basically that sort of decree where you're not allowed to be outside after a certain hour. So even if you sat on the train station and realized your train isn't coming, you couldn't go home because you wouldn't be allowed outside. So you'd have to spend the night at the train station as well. I was lucky, I suppose. My train was only late by 2 hours to come pick me up at Kiev, where I was. And then by the time I arrived, I was only like 6 or 7 hours late to Lviv, which is where I'm staying now. Ever since coming here, I guess my biggest issue was that I couldn't find use for myself, since at home, I guess most of what I was doing had something to do with my computer, but I don't use a laptop, but a desktop computer, so I couldn't pack it with myself to go. So I was stuck basically with just the phone, reading news, and then the entire day basically spending all my time in bed just scrolling Twitter or scrolling news websites. And I felt pretty much completely useless because there was no way for me to affect things in any way. So I was just like tweeting stuff, trying to, again, rally people to donate or to bring awareness to people that this is happening. This is not, just somewhere a distant small fight happening, but it's actually a full-scale invasion in Europe that very well may affect everybody at some point. Then later I got in contact with other community members in our local .NET community who were all really, really nice. One of those people was able to lend, actually I was able to borrow their laptop so I could actually do something. And I guess the first few things that I did was try to use my open source influence to, again, bring awareness to the war that was happening, and try to use that, again, influence to get people to do something about it, either by donating or by spreading that information through their own networks, or by, virtually anything else. So yeah, I updated my repositories with links and with other information. I updated my website. I also updated my applications so that they would show up that information for everybody that opens them. Yeah, and apart from that, just, trying to help other people in the community as much as they can, and trying to stay sane in all of this, I suppose. That's it for me.
Michael Bodnarchuk, you're the next one. Actually, those are very disturbing stories. And just a few words before you start. I encourage everyone who's listening us to support Ukraine, and you can find useful resources at war.ukraine.ua, or just open the latest tweet in my profile. There's a link in there.
Yeah. Okay, so here is my story, and at this moment I'm in Uzhhorod in the rented apartment. So luckily we started to prepare for the invasion for about a month. My friend rented an apartment in the center of Uzhhorod in the beginning of February, and when I had to decide what should I do in case of something, I decided that I will go just to my friends, because in these hard times it would be easier to go through them together. So I planned this from February. So when I heard the explosions at 5 a.m., I just called my friend and said to him, "So it began. Let's move on." And we took the car, we took our families, and we traveled 3 days through the big traffic jams to Uzhhorod, and listening to some explosions here and there, and we successfully got here. So I don't know, I didn't feel any stress, or I wouldn't say that something really happened to me emotionally. Well, I was already prepared myself to what can it be. I remember I watched the film about Syria, about Aleppo, and I had clear understanding that Kyiv can be turned into Aleppo. So I had these pictures in my head, and that was my reason to run away in the very first hours of this invasion. So I didn't even thought if I should stay for more, maybe to try to see what will happen. I just understood that everything may happen, and I better to watch it from the safe place. So we stayed in Uzhhorod with my friend for about 4 or 3 days, and then we got bored. You see, he wanted to do something around. I wanted to help him, and we started volunteering. So he had a car, and we traveled across the Ukraine, helping people to deliver stuff to Kyiv and get people who are stuck in Kyiv to the western Ukraine. So we have spent the 6 days on this. So we traveled a lot across the country, mostly of the safe place. We passed a lot of outposts. We helped not so much, but pretty. We helped some people to get to from the Kyiv. We brought helmets. We brought some food to Kyiv, and yeah, basically this was pretty interesting part of the story, because we finally felt that we are doing something important. We saw how the volunteering organizations work, how the logistics work in these systems. So, and we've found out that all the people in Ukraine actually are trying to help somehow. Even they don't know how to help, they are trying to at least to be useful. Even and that also where we, and some people tried to give us money for this ride from Kyiv to Lviv. We didn't accept them, and we did everything for free. We only took the money for the fuel from the volunteering organization, but all the 6 days we traveled on our own, and felt it was pretty interesting. So most of my friends evacuated. Some of them still in Kyiv, so in my apartment. A few of my friends live. I really hope it's still a safe place there, but I don't know. So far, Kyiv is not the primary target. It's a primary target, but it's not heavily damaged like Kharkiv or Bucha. By the way, the friend of mine who I was traveling with had his apartment in Bucha, and it was hit. Yeah, but fortunately, all my friends at least seems to be safe at this moment. My mom is in Vinnytsia, and she looks to be safe as well. So I really have a good hopes, and I just wait when the Putin gets out of his missiles, gets out of his troops, and probably this where the war ends, and maybe we will have a good time in the summer in Ukrainian Crimea after all of this. So that's my story. Whom should I pass next?
Sviatoslav is the next one.
Hello, I'm Sviat. So currently I live in the Czech Republic, and I'm in Ukrainian. When it all began, I was staying up late and scrolling Twitter feed, and I distinctly remember this moment when all of my feed turned into reports of explosions from all of the big cities. It was hard to process. I tried not to have some like bad thoughts and stuff like this. I was trying to think how I would help my family and what to do, if I can move them or not. Just days before that, I was visiting Ukraine, and I got back to the Czech Republic almost right before this started happening, so I suppose I got lucky. That day in the morning, my family shares their geolocation with me, so I noticed my brother going to Kiev. They live in the suburbs, and I immediately called him, and apparently they didn't fully realize what was happening back then. They've heard something about the explosions. They thought maybe it's something in some small town, and that's all. Uh, I think I even yelled at him a bit, urging to get back to the town, to the parents and our other brother, which he did in a few hours. After that, I was communicating with my parents occasionally. They were still staying in their apartment in suburbs. But about in half a day, they finally decided and moved to a village a bit further from Kiev to their parents, my grandparents. I've got another pair of grandparents who still live in the town right now and basically refuse to leave their places. There is a lot of panicking around, and that is one of the reasons my mom didn't really want to evacuate, because she's trying to emotionally support the family, the grandparents, some extended family that also lives nearby. Some of my relatives got pretty scared and started evacuating. And just today met some of them. They were traveling for like 3 days without, like, almost with no money. And I'm happy to report that they got some accommodation from the local assistance center for the volunteers. I've helped them to go through some documentation stuff to get this new special visa that would allow them to work here. Well, at least I've done that. But around 9 hours ago, there have been some reports about power outages and some Russian troops in the area where my parents are still staying, and I don't get any updates from them anymore. I will probably be trying to contact them with some other methods, but currently I have like zero idea how they are holding up, where they are, what they are doing. Yeah, I just realized I skipped the open source introduction part. So I will just mention that I co-maintain some web frameworks in Python, like CherryPy and HTTP, and at work I participate in the Ansible project. This whole period is quite devastating. We're trying to support each other emotionally. I know that a lot of people abroad have this survivor syndrome, and it's taking away their sanity as well. So yeah, we need to stay strong, stay united, trying to support the charities in the army financially and send some humanitarian aid, whatever we can. I don't know what to add to this, but yeah, ask me anything.
Thank you. Yeah, just a quick reminder about the process. Our speakers are telling who they are, what projects they have created or maintained for a long time and maintaining right now. and then they tell us their story, how they live in the wartime, during the wartime. If again, the reminder, if you have any question, ask them in my direct messages. I will moderate them, and at the end of this space, we will answer them. The next one is Illya Klymov. He is from Kharkiv. So I guess you have a lot of stories to tell.
Probably not that much, because a lot of was already told. Yes, my name is Illya. I'm in open source. I'm co-maintainer of the Vue test utils and Vue test utils next, the testing framework for Vue.js framework for front end. Also, I am quite fresh maintainer of the Bootstrap Vue project, where I was working on the releasing new Vue free support. And yes, I was born in Kharkiv 33 years ago, and right now I'm still in Kharkiv. And while we were talking here, just another missile, rocket missile or bomb, obviously it is pretty hard to identify because it's night, landed less than 1 kilometer away from my location. It is landed to one of the malls. It is not a military object, nothing, just a shopping mall, pretty recently opened, called Nikolsky. Maybe someone who was in Kharkiv already knows that. And I realized that I've never trusted this war will ever start. I was always talking like, hey, yes, we have a military escalation in our country, on the borders of our country, but I realized that something big is happening, like 1 hour before official announcement, when no-fly zone notice was sent, effectively closing the sky all over the Ukraine. It was something around 4 a.m. and officially the military operation, how Russia is calling this war, was declared at 5:15 a.m. And at this point, at 5:07 a.m. or something, I called my parents, who also live in Kharkiv, told them to go to the petrol station to have a full tank of petrol, I have something like 15 minutes to take decision. I believe that probably one of the most important decisions I've ever took in my life. Either I decide to stay in Kharkiv or I immediately evacuate elsewhere. And after certain consideration, I've decided to stay. And for 2 weeks in a row, I'm working in a close touch with volunteers, with regular army forces, and a lot of other people who stayed do it in the same way. We are helping people, we are helping militaries with drones, with resources, making sure they're fed well, making sure they're aware of any potential location of terroristic groups introduced to the city, which are coordinating fire from inside the town. I've never been in the direct contact with enemy. However, I drove a car multiple days in these 2 weeks. And see all the disaster caused by the direct attacks, and they are not stopping, and I do not see how they will stop. I mean, rocket and bombing attacks in the nearest future. In a week ago or so, the Russian army tried to take the city. There were very heavy fights here and there in the city, but right now they're sitting in the city border. And another big problem is that, well, you can't simply evacuate, even if you want, the 1 million people city anywhere. We have a railway station working at full load, having approximately 12 trains per day living to the west of Ukraine and now sometimes to Poland and elsewhere. But this is simply not enough. And another task while I'm staying here is helping volunteers to coordinate all the humanitarian aid we're receiving and making sure that people who are hiding in the bomb shelters, in the same way like I do now, making sure that people hiding in, especially in underground stations, we have an underground in the city and it is obviously serving as bomb shelters now, are receiving at least some food, some medicines, some water, and so on. And another thing which I would like to specially highlight, because, well, we are IT people, we are software developers. I would like to highlight an extreme effort by all network engineers. It is like mostly a volunteer effort for keeping internet connection working in the city and keeping mobile networks up in the city, because right now the internet is the main source of news for us. We receive even the airstrike alerts via internet. This is the fastest way, and I can't state how it is important to prevent panicking. I really saw, well, I also I had a tiny bit of training in university. I'm an officer in reserve. I've never been in army for real, but I've had some kind of minor training for that. So I saw how disastrous could be a panic in just for few women in our shelter in the third day of war or the fourth, and it was really dangerous for everyone around. So I can say how it is important for everyone to keep calm here, and this is what I'm trying to do, and what I'm trying to help others to do. I believe this is end of my story.
Thanks, Ilya. I also want to confirm that like the network engineers in many cities in Ukraine are doing a tremendous work. They are literally restoring cables and like cabling the optic cables in the spots where like the bombs were blasting, you know. So thanks to them for the efforts. Next one will be Vadim. Please continue.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to try to keep it short because I realize that a lot of people have many questions. So you may have heard about me in the open source community from the Ava test framework project for JavaScript and Ink. So yeah, I'm that weird guy who decided it was a good idea to bring React to Terminal. So I want to start by confirming basically what Paul said. I'm going to speak for myself. I had a great life in Ukraine. I lived previously in Canada, and I moved back because I realized that I wanted to live here, be here, because that's just how I felt. And I was actually in the process of moving to Kiev when the war started. So I was like in the process of bringing of bags like from my home city in the west to Kiev. So actually on the morning of 24th, when at 6 a.m., 6:17 to be precise, my dad called me and basically he said, well, it's happening. He didn't have to explain. Like I've been following the news the past year, so I was like pretty up to date about any new developments, but I was still planning my life and just doing what I wanted to do. And I guess I just didn't believe that it would get to that point, so I just kept going with it with my plans. So because of that, because of my process of moving to Kiev, I kind of had a couple of bags already packed, but because I just was lazy enough to unpack them in time, so they kind of just was there in the apartment. So I just got the bags that were already packed and got my documents and went down to the parking lot and saw other people from the same building already packing their bags as well to their cars. So I also, like, after my dad called me, I immediately called my best friends who are also in Kiev, but unfortunately, like super far from me, basically on the other end of the city, and told them basically the same thing: just pack your stuff. I'm driving to get you. And yeah, that's basically what I did. And then we also picked up her relatives. So at the end, it was 5 of us and 2 cats. So 1 cat in the car is bad enough, but imagine if there's 2. So yeah, it was a big trouble getting out of Kiev. I think it took like 8 hours just to get to the nearest city, which is actually Irpin, which is being heavily bombed right now. So yeah, we took that route, and we kind of, like, I guess, blocked it a bit, like the whole situation, and tried to cheer up everyone in the car. But when we were driving in Irpin, and I think a bomb exploded not really far from where we are, because I saw in my left car mirror a lot of black, dark smoke. That's when we realized that, well, like it was kind of like a reality check, and then basically our mood changed really fast, and the car got silent, and we didn't say anything to each other, because I think all of us were thinking, okay, well, that was the first one. Where is the next one gonna be? So fortunately, the next one exploded pretty far from us, and there was a third one even farther away from us. But then, like a minute after that, we saw our Ukrainian two of our fighter jets flying into the opposite direction of where we're driving, and we kind of got, like, we calmed ourselves down with that, because a few minutes later we also read the news that they took down 1 helicopter. So that's how we got out of Kiev. So that alone took 8 hours, and the whole ride to my hometown in the west, which is actually not that far. It's like 350 kilometers from Kiev, which usually takes me 3-something hours to drive, but it took 22 total. And I think I caught myself not once just sleeping behind the wheel while we in the heavy traffic at night, because, well, like, we were driving nonstop pretty much, and I didn't want to stop and take a break, because I realized, well, that's not an option for all of us. So yeah, so that's how the first day went by, and the mood was not that great, and I think I really did not know what to expect next. And I want to also say, well, like, to just a couple of words how my days go by right now. So I think it's pretty much every Ukrainian right now. We have the Telegram channels, we have the news, we have the YouTube channels open 24/7. I'm actually watching the news right now as I'm talking, so I'm sorry for that. So that was the first day, but on the next day and then the days after that, I think I changed my mood to the better direction because I saw how successful our army is. I think, like, looking back, I think our government could have done a much better job explaining to all of us, like, how awesome our army is. Like, I'm honestly, I did not know how awesome it actually is, and today I strongly believe in the positive outcome for us, in the win for Ukraine. So I can even say that I'm in okay mood these days, because the constant news of our progress, of our people, of like, everybody tries to do something to help Ukraine, to help the people, to help the army, to help the people in need. So I think that's just beautiful to watch, and I cannot actually wait that after we win this, I cannot actually wait to see the new Ukraine that we like work all all so hard for, and I'm really believing in that. And I also, since we got a huge audience right now, I just want to say thank you to everyone abroad. Thank you for everyone for helping people who are at the border, helping people who are here and need donations, need support, and you all do that so that's just beautiful to watch, and I appreciate it a lot. And I also want to thank personally all the people who donated to our military. A week ago, I basically said let's collect donations for our army, and a lot of my friends and just people who heard about this tweet donated really big amounts of money, and I just couldn't be more thankful to all of you. So that's amazing. So I'm hopeful. I'm trying to stay positive, and trying to do my best with my skills to do something good for our nation, for our people, and for our country. So yeah, I'm just gonna pass the turn to the next person. Thanks everyone.
Thanks, Vadim.
Thank you.
Denis.
I have a few words to say. I see a lot of people asking to join as speakers. I have to apologize because Spaces and Twitter are allowed to host only 10 speakers, and our time is limited, so we will not add any new speakers in the nearest future. If you have any question, you can ask me in direct messages. I will ask our speakers today. So yeah, we can move on to Ihor. You're the next one.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you, Denis. Yeah, I'm a senior developer advocate at the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, which is one of the largest open source foundations in the world, and we are the home for the various open source projects. We have more than 100 projects, including some most notable ones as Kubernetes, Prometheus, Envoy, Knative, and others. And in my specific case, I've been a Kubernetes contributor for a while, for 5 or 6 years, since the early days of the Kubernetes community, and many folks from the open source community may know me, specifically from the Kubernetes community mostly. And it was for many folks who know me, it was kind of surprising for them that this person is living in Ukraine, while so many contributors to these open source projects are typically based in the other areas of the world. But I've been living in Ukraine for the most of my life. For the last 8 years, I'm living in Lviv, the biggest city in the western part of Ukraine. And yeah, speaking about Lviv and speaking about the geographical location of this area, so Lviv is kind of like the safe harbor here. Oleksii has explained this a little bit in his story, how he moved from Kiev to Lviv and discovered that it's kind of like the safe place to stay. So I was a little bit lucky comparing to other folks who have been residing in different areas of Ukraine. So I was staying in Lviv for the last few years, and fortunately we haven't had any shelling here. No missiles have been flying and arriving here in the city, and so the period before the full-scale invasion was a little bit worrying, and honestly, I haven't believed that the real full-scale invasion can happen. I felt fully supported by my company, by my friends, by my community mates, and so many folks have advised me to kind of move the country for a while, just to be safe, just in case something will happen. So I'll be in a different place, not in Ukraine, if something will go wrong. But I was kindly refusing these proposals. Firstly, because I couldn't imagine that anything like the full-scale invasion can happen. And second, and the most important, is that we have friends here, we have families here, and it's our motherland after all. So basically, me and my wife, we have made a decision that we will not leave the country even if some kind of invasion will happen. Obviously, we couldn't expect the full-scale invasion as it did happen, really, but I have zero doubts about my previous decision. So I'm currently staying in Ukraine, and I'm doing the best what I can do. So the week before the full-scale invasion was a little bit worrying. So, like all this news about the some news from Moscow with all this security board meeting led by Putin, with all this kind of like public and private negotiations about like the future of the Donetsk Republic and Donetsk republics, and so on. So yeah, it was a little bit worrying, but like probably the most worrying and the most sleepless night in my life was the night actually before the invasion. So the night of February 24th, when actually the war has started. So that night, so the most worrying part of that night was the moment when Ukraine and Russia have closed their aerospace. Ukraine has closed the aerospace in the eastern part of Ukraine, in the airports of Kharkiv, Dnipro, and Zaporizhia, I believe, and Russia has closed the airspace in some regions that are pretty close to the Ukrainian border. So I had a strange feeling that something will happen. That night I slept for an hour, but that was exactly that hour when all the shit has begun, when the actual full-scale war has begun. So I woke up around like 5:30 or something like this. I checked the news. I realized that the war is happening right now. So I immediately called my dad. My wife called her mom, just like kind of checking if they're okay. Because one of the missiles, one of the airstrikes has happened, has hit the aircraft in my native city, Dnipro, which is located like way more closer to the war zone than Lviv. So we had to check that if they're okay and so on, and like basically to wake them up and like to move them to some further action. In my case, I just like picked up the keys from the car, immediately jumped in the car, and me and my wife basically drove out to fuel the car because like I realized that we have like almost the tank empty, and I could expect that we'll have like such long lines on the fueling station just because of all the shit that is happening. And I could also imagine and expect that my car will be an essential assistant unit for me in the next few days, and that has actually happened. So on the first day of the war, again, like I realized that Lviv is a safe harbor, kind of like the safe harbor. It doesn't mean that people in Lviv doesn't have the feeling of the war. We all live in the same country, and we have the feeling of the war. But Lviv is not the front. Lviv is not a battlefield, but Lviv is is kind of the area in Ukraine where other folks from other regions arrive, and best seen what people in Lviv can do is to help folks from other regions to accommodate here, to stay here, and so I've been volunteering for a while with my car, like helping people to drive from the railway station to their local to their spots where they're gonna stay, like transferring and loading and unloading some humanitarian aid and so on. At the same time, I've realized that it's not enough to basically to help the country that is in a state of war, because it's like everything that every single person in Ukraine these days is doing is amazing, but sometimes you need to do more just to protect your land, just to protect your family, just to protect your city from the potential invasion. So on the second day after the war began, I've asked myself more seriously, how can I help? And I made a decision to enlist and sign up for the Territorial Defense Forces of Ukraine. So if you don't know, what does it mean? So this is the Military Defense Forces of Ukraine. Right now, I'm officially a soldier. Basically, this meant that I'm temporarily given up on my open source contributions and my open source activities. Kind of like I'm not doing approximately 95% of stuff that I've been doing before the war. And I'm mostly focused these days on kind of learning, preparing, and getting ready to protect my my land, my family, my friends, and my country from the enemy. Denis?
Thank you a lot. That's actually a brave choice to inscript. I also realized that I forgot to tell my story. As Sviatoslav said, I also feel some kind of survival guilt because I'm not experienced this horrors of war, and I'm far from the front line. But I will surely remember the first day of the war. My mom wake me up in the morning in like 7 a.m. and she told me, like she was almost crying. She said, Putin has attacked us, the war has begun, like wake up. And I was shocked. I immediately woke up, dressed up, and went to fill up the tank of my car because you know, when the war began, you surely expect shortages of food, fuel, electricity, and so on. So in our family, we decided who does what, who is responsible for what, and I was responsible for the car. And I went to the gas station and I waited in line. There were huge traffic jams. I waited for 4 hours to fill up the tank of my car, and that's it. I couldn't eat anything this day. We were following the news for the whole day, and the next day, people started fleeing westwards and arriving to my town. My coworker and friends of my girlfriend were trying to get rid of Kiev. Also, my friends were trying to leave the city, and I decided to help the best I can. I hosted my teammate with his family in my house. His wife is pregnant with twins, and she gave birth at March 7th. They have twins right now. Also, they have 2 cats, and all of them live in my house right now. Also, friends of my girlfriend were fleeing from Kiev. We were trying to find them an apartment in a building that is not ready. So we were trying to clean stuff, fix some stuff that it's not ready yet, and we were trying our best to help them find housing, simple home appliances, food, cover basic needs for the first time. And my typical day is volunteering during the day, and during the night as a software engineer, I attack Russian government websites, banks, telecom services. We organize in groups to coordinate our attacks, and the goal is to harm Russia as hard as possible in every possible way. And what I do is trying my best to help in any possible way. And tomorrow I'm going to some kind of a crash course in how to handle an assault rifle and how to give first aid, tactical medicine. So I'm trying my best to get ready to possible actions in my area. So that's it, and we can move on to questions. I have a few. I have to say that there's a lot of question from you guys. I'm surprised that it went so viral. So I picked a few the most I guess interesting ones. So the first one, what do you think? Should Western platforms join in sanctions against the Russian regime by blocking access to GitHub, NPM, and so on to developers from Russia? I also see GitHub account is listening. What do you think about the fact that they are still providing services in Russia? So just guys unmute and tell what you think about it.
So I think I can comment a bit because I was recently working on this like Stand with Ukraine GitHub repository, and in that repository we had several tough discussions regarding sanctioning or like basically imposing any limitations to on the regular Russia citizens. Of course, I advise you to go to that repository in my GitHub account and just read the threads, read the issues, because it really explains a lot of our thoughts as a community of Ukraine developers. But overall, the question is tough. First of all, GitHub is currently one of the ways that we can communicate to Russian people. But on the other hand, if the question is like, should we somehow, I don't know, distinguish between Russian people and the Russian government? My personal opinion is that at this stage, no. I'd say like people in Russia are in general in charge of the I don't know, parliament, in charge of the rulers, in charge of Putin himself. So I think this is a general conclusion, and I think most of us are aligned to that. But if not, please comment, guys.
Yeah, just be short as short as it possible, because time is limited.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that ever since the beginning of war in 2014, and ever since the resurgence of the full-scale invasion that happened 2 weeks ago, there have been many different sanctions on both the government levels and I guess corporate levels. And from my personal perspective, as a person that sometimes wonders in the Russian-speaking communities, or like looks up what is being discussed on Twitter and Russian spaces and stuff like that, I can say that as far as regular sanctions go that are I guess deployed on a government level or against like Putin specifically or against people in his circles, have visibly no impact on ordinary people. They continue to like go about their ordinary lives, continue obviously not all of them are like that, but a very big majority of people that live in Russia they might not even like Putin specifically, but they have views and I guess ideals that are very aligned with what Putin represents. And the only thing that kind of started shaking that foundation, I feel like, is actual corporations at everyday things that people are used to starting to disappear from Russian people's lives, and they started questioning why does it happen? Because, they can always say that, our government is corrupt, so it makes sense why they sanctioned them, but why am I responsible? And then people either from Ukraine or also from Russia started discussing those issues, and they start pointing out how whatever is happening have been going on for many years, and there's more than just corruption at the top brass. A lot of people are corrupted in their minds to begin with, and I think that has done a lot more than anything else prior to that. even things like McDonald's or other like fast food chains or everyday services like Netflix that people use have had more impact on the perception of the world events in Russian than anything else prior to that. So to that end, I think GitHub having the influence that it does have, I think it makes sense for it to also use it to help in that regard.
And I also would like to add just a few cents on this topic. I'm going to try to be short. And sorry if this is not safe for work or something like that, but I understand that it may seem sound like super strict, super harsh from the outside, from abroad, and I don't blame anyone thinking that without context, because I do not expect you to know everything that goes on here and what's been going on for the past 8 years and the last 30 years and more. But I think it takes 2 videos to change your mind. So first video, as you can easily find anywhere, is our civilians being bombed, and especially children being killed. So that's the first video. And the second video, which is more important, I think, is when you see journalists in Russia asking regular people on the streets what do they think about it, and the majority support it. So that's the second video. Not sure if there's a translated English version, but you can be sure it exists, and a lot of those videos exist. So after you watch these 2 videos, it kind of is an obvious choice of what to do next. Thank you.
I'd like to add a bit more pointers at the context. Because as Ukrainians, we usually have this in the back of our minds. We have memories of stuff that's been going on historically, and we know a lot about our history, but people from the outside world usually know the version of history that's been shaped by the Russian propaganda and so on. And I would encourage people to educate themselves. And there is this well-known historian who is a professor at Yale. His name is Timothy Snyder. And I encourage you to read his articles, and he's also given some talks both explaining the bizarre things in the statements that Putin has made and the historical context and stuff like this. Because as Ukrainians, we often face discrimination from the Russian people, even though it may not seem like it. But it is happening right now. It's been happening for the last 30 years of the independence. It's been happening for the last 300 years with various decrees forbidding the Ukrainian and Belarusian language, for example, and basically even forbidden to name kids with names that are not officially listed in their allow lists, let's say. So yeah, I would really encourage people to dig deeper into our millennia-old history, because it's really old, and it's interesting, and it puts a lot of things into the perspective, and it could help you understand why the Ukrainians often feel like not doing business with Russians or avoiding them, and that it's not some random event of a leader trying to impose his will and create this war and stuff like this. It actually has a lot of support in the population, and that is why it is really important to make it accessible to the ordinary people, that it's their responsibility to. The responsibility is shared. Thanks.
I would absolutely sign under these words. So please, Dennis, ask any further questions.
Yeah, short opinion also about the GitHub sanctions against Russia. I support blocking access to GitHub for businesses, at least blocking payments in Russia, or blocking businesses from hosting private repositories. Like GitHub is only for open source. And if we speak about blocking GitHub entirely, we should be very careful because open source community is very interconnected, and we have to be careful in order to avoid accidents like we had with LeftPad, for example. The next question is, are you guys going to be conscripted to the military in near future? If so, what are your feelings about it? So your answers. Yeah, again, try to be short.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I'll be really short. So first thing first, if I do get conscripted, I'll happily go to war. Right now they're in that, like, right now there is no shortage of people fighting. So if you do apply for a recruitment office, you'll probably be turned back simply because unless you have experience, you're not as useful, and there is more use of you just like being able to stay home and do other things to help the country. But if things get worse and Ukraine will need more soldiers on the front line, I'll happily join the ranks.
Yep, same for me.
Yeah, and as I'm an officer in reserve, I believe this is not my just moral, but also a kind of, well, I really like to work with the people who follow their contracts, and I believe this is a contract between me and my country, which I both morally and legally wouldn't expect to follow. It will be so, but I hope this will not happen.
Also, we have a question about companies that would like to employ us, but I have to say that we men in Ukraine are right now are forbidden to leave the country, so only for women and kids. That's like the short answer to the question about work and business opportunities.
Dennis, maybe like remote work is under consideration, so maybe we can answer that.
Yeah, if anyone can suggest remote work, I guess we can retweet those opportunities so people in need can join your company. Just ping us, any one of speakers in this chat. So the further question is, how should we highlight manipulations made by Russian open source developers and contributors who are trying to look like good guy for international community? And there's also some list of names, but I will not mention that. So what do you guys think about Russians trying to be good guys?
Hey, can I answer?
Sure.
Yeah, go on.
So obviously there are many great people in Russia, like there are many great people in any other country. And most of those great people that I personally know that lived in Russia are making huge efforts to leave the country those weeks because they do not want to contribute to the regime of war aggression. They just want to live a simple life. So but the important thing again is that there are quite a few people in Russia who support the regime because of their news and stuff. So that's it.
Can I be next? So yeah, I have a feeling that people in Russia are like hostages in the terrorist hands, and lots of hostages live for so long in the situation that they believe that they're actually not hostages but normal people, and this is how normal life looks like. And this is like Stockholm syndrome. So I can have some empathy to them, but in the end, if this Stockholm syndrome storms that these people would transform themselves to be a terrorist, they are enemies. So I'm very suspicious to this kind of people. They are really they. We had lots of discussions with them in Twitter. They asked us a lot, like, why do you hate us so much? It's Russophobic stuff and so on. But you see, it really happened because it wasn't clear of their old beliefs and how deep they are into this propaganda stuff. And most of them actually were. So my idea is that we should treat them by persons. Sure, we shouldn't globally, all Russians actually takes the responsibilities in these events. But people who stand against the regime, who publicly oppose it, who do whatever they can to say this, they are our friends, and we should be with them. And if they support us, we will support them. But they should have courage to stand against these things.
I think we should be supporting people who are not afraid to show their support and make effort to learn about what's actually happening despite the propaganda. Unfortunately, many of us, our relatives, have had these experiences when they called their own relatives in Russia and heard back that they are Nazis. They heard back that they are bombing their own cities. They heard back that the Russians are liberators and the Ukrainians are stupid for not understanding this. The Russian people would just hang up if they hear any sort of trying to explain what's actually happening. So, in some regard, I think we could treat some of those people as, how do you say it? Some of the recommendations suggested that they should be treated as people who you are trying to pull out of a cult. So we need to calmly explain, like have answers to their questions, and sometimes be less confrontational if we want to have any chance of having them understand our points of view as well. Thanks.
Sure. Let's go on.
Can I? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to add like 10 words about propaganda. Just one thing is that we all can see how absurd Russian propaganda is just by following the news. And since a lot of people have joined and started following them, it has become more apparent. But it has been going on for many, many, many years. And in the age of internet and the age of free information, and I have to remind you that Russia didn't have most of the internet blocked until like 2 weeks ago, it's almost completely inexcusable to not like let go of your ignorance and try to learn anything outside of what the state propaganda is trying to tell you. And the reason for that is not because they couldn't, it's because they didn't want to, because they were fed certain rhetorics that they were comfortable believing that they were true, and they didn't want to escape from that place and learn that they were actually basically the bad guys. So I think, I just wanna say that it should be treated with a grain of salt how people are saying that they are just victims of propaganda, because I don't think it's a reasonable excuse in 21st century.
Yeah, there's also a follow-up question. What do you guys think about ordinary Russian protesting against the war? Have you anything to add to it?
They need to learn to stand up for themselves. They need to learn from Ukrainians, because Ukrainians go against tanks without any weapons under the bullets, just ordinary people. And then there are videos of Russian micro protests where 100 of people is running away from one small policeman. It's just surreal how they don't believe in themselves at all.
I'd like to comment on that maybe because we had a recent cause or just a nice I'd say picture of what's happening. So imagine that McDonald's is shutting down in Russia, right? So Russian people are just attending lines in McDonald's, which is shutting down and not protesting against war, right? So basically this is how they think usually. I don't know, even all these sanctions that are imposed now, they are not really touching them yet enough, so that they don't try to understand why this is happening. Most people probably don't even have a clue that this is all related to the special operation, how they say, a special military operation. So that's why I think I need to emphasize that GitHub at least shouldn't be blocked from all Russian users. I think Dennis got a really good idea that maybe any business account should be locked and something like that, but it should not maybe apply these kind of measures to regular users. But I think that there should be some good communication channels that we can show them what's happening and somehow to break the propaganda wall, right? That's my idea.
I wanna jump back a little bit on actually the initial question about potential blocking GitHub in Russia, and I would actually second Danny's opinion a little bit, and can be kind of the controversial opinion, but this is basically against the nature of open source. So as a person who has been spending almost its life in open source, I would say that it's a bad move to restrict any pieces of open source based on any criteria. However, I would definitely encourage. I'm not asking GitHub directly right now, but I would definitely encourage folks in the world to find a way. How can we avoid? How can we find a way to have some pieces of code, some code base, some software that is hosted on the platforms like GitHub, GitLab, some other sources, to be used in the military actions, something that is happening right now in Ukraine. So we should not, my personal opinion, that we should not block the access to the software itself, but to avoid its usage for the bad purpose.
What I was saying is it's not about blocking open source projects. I was saying about blocking access for businesses to host private code on GitHub. Something like you are not allowed to push your code anymore here. Just if it's open source, just publish it. If it's closed source and you have to pay bills for CI and actions and so on, you're not allowed to do so. Find another company, another hosting.
Yeah, service. Sure. Yeah. I completely agree with you. Just wanted to highlight that piece of the kind of like the open source nature. Yeah, like on this stuff, I completely agree with you, Dennis.
Yeah. So yeah, another question about like suggesting help to us. I would like to help you guys get abroad. As I said, we're not allowed to get abroad. I can, but another point, I can even host you at my house or your family. How can I help? Well, ask in chats, some in Ukrainian communities. Approach directly, publish in Twitter, like I'm willing to host a family. Maybe someone will contact you in need. So the final question for today, how to help Ukraine digitally? Can we automate sending videos or photos to Russians, their IDs and their confessions? So please tell our audience how they can help Ukraine digitally, financially, and so on.
Hey, sorry, could I have just 30 seconds here? So I think one of the most important things here is letting people know that Telegram is not secure messenger. It stores all the data in plain text on their servers, and even leak the information to any Russian forces. They could be leaking it at any minute. And since Telegram is one of the most popular messengers in Ukraine, this is very dangerous. So I think some, media needs to propagate that it is very dangerous to keep using it.
Yeah. Well, basically, I did basically use my free time to create this resource on GitHub called Stand with Ukraine. I collected a bunch of documents and banners that could be used in GitHub repositories, and they just for raising awareness. And also there are some docs. So by the way, the Telegram question is also covered by the cybersecurity doc. I have a few guides on what to do if you're a project maintainer and you want to help Ukraine. I have a doc about what to do, like the list of companies to avoid, basically to apply personal sanctions to them. And mostly, like you can check it out. You can please read the issues. It really explains some tough questions, our view on tough questions. And if you feel that there is something missing in that repository, feel free to open an issue and we can address it.
I have also tell that you can help again at the website called war.ukraine.ua. There are a lot of links to Ukrainian charities, to Ukrainian Army, Red Cross, charities that help children, hospitals, and so on. You can help there. You can send videos or photos to Russians directly, spread the word. For example, there are horrible pictures of today's attack at maternity hospital in Mariupol. There are like pregnant women. I just like can't describe it. It's horrible. So spread the word. Make sure your government representatives are aware of the problem. Make sure they are ready to help us to defend the freedom, dignity, the ideals of the Western world.
Do you mind if I
That's
add a few words to that?
yeah, sure, go on.
So I just, despite all of that that's been going on, I just wanted to kind of end on a rather try to end on a rather positive note and just say that the fact that all of you are here right now listening is already means so much to us, and the fact that everyone around the world walks out in support for Ukraine is absolutely stunning to see. It gives us even stronger belief. It gives us even stronger hope. And well, it's honestly like every time I watch these amazing people in thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands, walk out in your capitals and your cities, it gives us strength. It makes me like literally shiver watching these videos because it's absolutely beautiful. And and it's just great knowing that we are not alone in this, and we have the support of the entire world. And with that said, until this war is over, no effort, no support is like, how do I say it, is enough. So we all of us, not just you, like all of us can always do more to end this soon. So shall I just again want to thank every one of you, and yeah, it's just incredible. Thanks for listening to us, and thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Stay safe. Hopefully we will all get through it.
Just wanted to mention that we may have a follow-up meeting maybe in a week or so. So please keep in touch. Please follow us, and as usual, please send any questions. We may select the most popular questions, or just some questions that are usually misunderstood to answer during the next session. Thanks for joining. Was really glad to be here with you.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks
everyone
everyone.
for coming. Bye all. Stay safe.
Everyone.